When a financial scam succeeds, the aftermath is a quiet devastation. Teachers lose their retirements, and war veterans watch their life savings evaporate. These people were left with nothing but empty accounts and past due bills on their kitchen tables. Yet the man responsible for this ruin received a global standing ovation. Hollywood turned his fraud into a hit comedy, inviting millions of viewers to laugh along with the very crimes that destroyed those families. This is Jorning Belfort. He orchestrated a $100 million fraud, served a brief 22 months in a minimum security prison, and emerged as a wealthy, world-famous celebrity. Belfort's success relied on a singular realization: the specific product being sold is irrelevant. He mastered the pitch, proving that a sufficiently persuasive salesman can move anything to anyone, including his own criminal history. The hustle began in 1962 in the working-class neighborhoods of Queens. At 16, Belfort spent a single summer selling Italian ices on the beach, pocketing $20,000 in cash by the end of August. He briefly attempted a conventional career path in dental school. He walked out on the very first day the moment the dean announced that dentistry was no longer a path to becoming rich. His first major venture was a door-to-door meat and seafood delivery business. It was a logistical nightmare, with no storage and no trucks, eventually collapsing into bankruptcy under a mountain of spoiled steaks and unpaid invoices. Inside that wreckage, he identified his superpower. He had moved $100,000 of product a month, despite the logistics being a disaster. He discovered that success required nothing more than a relentless, high-pressure pitch. The salesman was born. Belfort eventually took his talents to Wall Street, landing a job at L.F. Rothschild. This was his introduction to the world of institutional greed, where he learned how the markets moved and how the veteran brokers closed their deals. That career path ended abruptly on Black Monday in late October 1987. The market crash cost him his job, forcing him to look for opportunities in the unregulated fringes of the financial world. He pivoted to penny stocks. These were shares of tiny, obscure companies that were often illiquid, meaning they were difficult to sell quickly without losing value. Legitimate brokers ignored them, but Belfort saw a goldmine. The math of the penny stock market provided a staggering incentive. While a traditional trade earned a broker a tiny fraction of a percent, these stocks offered a 50% commission. The same sales pitch now yielded 10 times the reward. He began cold calling uneducated investors, pitching them on ground floor opportunities, while ignoring the actual business models of the companies. He told them that smart money acts before the crowd catches on, urging them to buy before it was too late. Belfort successfully bypassed his clients' logical reasoning. He weaponized the fear of missing out, wrapping worthless assets in an urgent narrative of guaranteed wealth. Alongside Danny Porish, he founded Stratton Oakmont. They chose a prestigious-sounding name to project a false history of stability, though the firm was actually a high-volume boiler room operating out of a strip mall. Belfort recruited neighborhood hustlers and bartenders rather than experienced analysts. He wanted hunger and loyalty over financial expertise, seeking people he could mold into relentless closing machines. He trained them using a psychological framework he called straight-line persuasion. This method taught dropouts to bulldoze hesitation and drown out client doubts. They were trained to guide every prospect along a single, unbroken path, from the first hello to the final check. The firm used these tactics to execute pump-and-dump schemes. They bought cheap shares, used the massive sales floor to manufacture hype and spike the price, and then sold their holdings at the top, leaving thousands of investors with nothing. Stratton Oakmont functioned as a psychological extraction machine. It specifically targeted the working-class retirees and desperate parents that mainstream Wall Street typically ignored. At the firm's peak, the hubris was total. The office became a chaotic blur of narcotics and violence, culminating in Belfort sinking his luxury yacht, the Naomi, after insisting on sailing directly into a Mediterranean storm while high on drugs. This recklessness eventually caught the attention of the SEC and the FBI. Agents began tracking the millions being laundered offshore through a web of shell companies and couriers who smuggled cash in their clothing. The end came after Belfort wired $2 million to Switzerland in 1997, while under explicit orders not to move funds. The FBI traced the transfer and possessed the recordings they needed to put him away for 30 years. Faced with decades in prison, Belfort treated the FBI like a client. He flipped on his partners, wore a wire, and sold out 30 of his closest friends and employees. He pitched their freedom in exchange for a light 22-month sentence for himself. Belfort served his time in a minimum security facility where he spent his mornings playing tennis. His cellmate was the comedian Tommy Chong, who was serving a sentence for selling bongs online. Chong convinced Belfort to write down his stories, leading to a memoir that read like a remorseless victory lap of fraud and narcotics. Hollywood eagerly purchased the narrative. Acclaimed director Martin Scorsese signed on to adapt the story, providing the project with an immense level of cultural prestige. The film adaptation placed the charismatic face of Leonardo DiCaprio over Belfort's actual crimes. It transformed a predatory villain into an entertaining, aspirational figure for a global audience. This was his most successful pitch yet. He successfully laundered his reputation, transforming himself from a convicted felon into a global pop culture icon. The everyday people Belfort scammed were left with nothing. They never received movie deals or publishing contracts, and the majority of them never saw their money again. A court ordered Belfort to pay $110 million in restitution. The vast majority remains unpaid, hidden away in legal loopholes, while he continues to claim he is working on the debt. Belfort now tours the world as a highly paid motivational speaker and sales coach. He wears the Wolf moniker as a badge of honor, while teaching the same high-pressure tactics that built his former empire. His ultimate success is an indictment of a culture that idolizes greed. By packaging his crimes as entertainment, Belfort proved a dark truth. He didn't just escape justice, he sold it back to us, and we applauded.